I've told this story maybe 4 times in my whole life. Once to my wife, once to a kid at a gun range who wouldn't stop bragging, and twice to myself, late at night when I couldn't sleep and the memory just walked back into the room like it owned the place. I'm going to tell it again now, slow, the way it actually happened. My name doesn't matter much. I was the spotter, the guy lying in the dirt next to the person everybody underestimated. So if you came here for the hero, that's not me. I just had the best seat in the house. Let me take you back. It was October, high desert, one of those training ranges out past nowhere, the kind of place where the map basically gives up and just says restricted. You drive 2 hours from the nearest gas station, and then you keep driving. The air out there does something strange in the fall. In the morning, it's so cold your breath hangs in front of your face like smoke. Then by noon, the sun cooks the rocks, and the heat comes shimmering up off the ground in those wavy lines, the ones that make faraway things look like they're underwater. That shimmer matters, hold on to that, it comes back later. There were maybe 40 of us out there for the long-range qualification. Snipers, designated marksmen, a few instructors, and a handful of brass who'd flown in to watch. The kind of men who wore sunglasses indoors and talked about metrics. And then there was her. Her name was Corporal Wren, first name Danny, though almost nobody called her that. She was small. I want to be honest about that because everybody noticed it first, and everybody was wrong about what it meant. She couldn't have been more than 5'4". Quiet. The kind of quiet that some people mistake for shy and other people mistake for stupid. She was neither. I'd been paired with her for 3 days. We'd barely talked. She'd check the wind, I'd call the dope, she'd send the round, and the steel a kilometer out would go clang. Then she'd do it again. And again. No celebration, no swagger, just that little nod like she was checking a box on a list only she could see. I liked her. Took me a day to figure out why. It's because she never once tried to convince me she was good. She just was, and she let the steel do the talking. Now I have to tell you about Vance. Sergeant First Class Marcus Vance was, at that point, kind of a legend on that range. And the thing about legends is that half of it is real and half of it is something they keep feeding so the fire doesn't go out. Vance was big, loud, forearms like bridge cables. He'd done real work overseas, and I won't take that from him. He had the kind of confirmed history that earns a man the right to talk. The problem was he knew it, and he wore it like a coat he never took off, even indoors, even when it was hot. He had this laugh. You could hear it across the whole range. Just one syllable, dropped like a rock, usually right after somebody missed. And from the minute Wren showed up, Vance had a thing about her. I don't know all of why. Maybe she reminded him of someone. Maybe he just couldn't stand that the quietest person on the line was out shooting half his guys. Some men get smaller when somebody else gets bigger, and they spend the rest of their lives trying to fix that math by tearing the other person down. The first day, he called her the intern. The second day, when she rang steel at 1,100 meters, dead center, 3 for 3, he just said, "Lucky group," loud enough for the brass to hear. She didn't even look at him, just reloaded. I leaned over and muttered, "You gonna let him talk like that?" She said, and I remember this exactly, "Steele doesn't care what he thinks. Neither do I." I shut up after that. Felt like a kid next to her, honestly. Okay, the third day. This is where it really starts. There's a thing they sometimes do at the end of a qualification, kind of unofficial, kind of a tradition. They set up an exhibition target, way out, way past anything you'd shoot at in normal training. It's not scored. It doesn't count for anything official. It's just there to humble people, to remind everybody that no matter how good you think you are, the planet is bigger and the air is weirder and gravity does not negotiate. That year they'd set up a plate at 3,800 meters. Let me put that in your stomach for a second. 3,800 meters. That's 3.8 kilometers. That's over 2 miles. From where we were lying, the target was a speck you couldn't even see with the naked eye. You needed the spotting scope just to find the little white dot, and even then it danced in the heat shimmer like it was trying to get away. At that distance, a bullet is in the air for, I'm not exaggerating, something like 6-7 full seconds. You fire and you have time to take a breath before anything happens downrange. The Earth literally rotates a measurable amount while your round is flying. You have to account for that. The spin of the planet. That's the kind of math you're doing. Most of the guys didn't even try it seriously. They'd send a round, watch it kick up dust 200 meters short or 50 meters wide, laugh and walk away. It was basically a party trick, a way to end the week feeling appropriately small. Vance, of course, made a show of it. He set up like he was being filmed, made everybody quiet down, took his time, talked through his process out loud so we'd all know how much he knew. Watching that left to right at the midpoint, gotta dump a few mils for the spin drift. This is where the men get separated from the, you get the idea. He fired. 7 seconds. And the round hit, not center, but it hit the dirt berm right next to the plate, close enough that we all heard a faint thwack of dust through the scope. At 3,800 meters, that's genuinely impressive. I'll give the man that. The brass clapped. He stood up, popped his neck, and grinned like he'd just won something. Then he turned around. And he looked right at Renner. I knew it was coming before he opened his mouth. You could feel it build, like the air right before lightning. "Hey," he said, loud, real loud so the officers could hear. "Intern." She was sitting off to the side, cleaning her optic with a little cloth, minding her own business the way she always did. She looked up, didn't say anything, just waited. Vance spread his arms out, all friendly, like he was doing her a favor. 3,800 meters, he said, and he let it hang there a second so everybody could appreciate the number. Then he smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile a man uses when he's about to make a small person smaller in front of an audience. "Can you even try?" And there it was. I felt my whole face get hot. I wanted to say something. Half the line had gone quiet. A couple of the younger guys laughed, that nervous laugh people do when they're not sure if it's okay to laugh, but they want to be on the winning side just in case. The brass were watching. That was the part that made it ugly. He'd done it in front of the people who decided careers. He hadn't just insulted her. He'd put her in a box in front of the men who write the reports. I looked at her, ready to see her face go red, ready to see her flinch. She didn't. She finished wiping her optic, folded the cloth, put it in her pocket, and then she did the thing I will never forget for the rest of my life. She smiled just a little, just at the corner of her mouth. And she said, "Sure." That's it, one word, sure. Then she stood up, walked over to the firing position, slow, no rush, like she had all the time in the world, and she looked at me and said the only thing she'd say to me for the next several minutes. "You spotting?" My mouth was dry. I said, yeah, I'm spotting." She lay down behind the rifle, and the whole range, all 40 of those men, went quiet in a way I'd never heard a range go quiet. Not the quiet of a ceasefire. The quiet of people who suddenly realized they might be about to watch something. I got down behind the spotting scope. And that's where part 1 ends, because I need to tell you what she did next exactly right, and that takes its own breath. So there we were. She's down behind the rifle. I'm down behind the spotting scope, maybe 2 feet to her left. The whole range is holding its breath, and I remember the first thing I actually felt wasn't excitement. It was fear. Not for her, for me. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about being a spotter. When the shooter is great, and she was great, the only person who can lose the shot for them is you. She does the trigger. She does the breathing. But the numbers, the wind, the drop, the math that turns a tiny dot 2 miles away into a thing you can actually hit. A lot of that goes through the spotter first. If I called it wrong, she'd send a perfect round into empty dirt. and Vance would laugh that one-syllable laugh, and it would be my fault. So my hands were shaking a little. I'm not proud of it, but they were. And she noticed, of course she noticed everything. She didn't look at me. She just said real quiet just for me, breathe. We've got time. Bullet's gonna be in the air for 7 seconds. We're not in a hurry. And somehow that did it. The shaking stopped. I don't know how she did that. Some people, when the pressure comes down, they get tight and loud. She got slow. Like the harder it got, the calmer she became. I've met maybe 2 people my whole life who are wired like that. Let me try to explain what we were actually looking at. Because if you don't understand it, you won't understand why what she did was insane. 3,800 meters. At 100 meters, a beginner can hit a target. At 500, a decent shooter. At 1,000, you're talking about a trained marksman and a good day. Past 2,000, you're in a world where almost everything that can go wrong goes wrong all at once, and you have to predict and correct for every single one of those things before the trigger even breaks. At 3,800, the list is long. There's the drop. Gravity's been pulling on that bullet the whole way, so by the time it gets out there, it's not flying straight, it's falling hard in a big curved arc. You're not really aiming at the target. You're aiming way, way above it, lobbing the round up into the sky so it comes back down onto the plate like a thrown rock. There's the wind. And here's the cruel part. The wind isn't the same the whole way out. Down by us it might be drifting left to right gentle, but halfway to the target, down in that low spot where the heat pools, it could be doing something completely different. And out near the plate, near that berm, it could swirl. So you're not reading the wind. You're reading 3, 4, 5 different winds stacked along the flight path, and you're trying to average them into one number in your head while your heart's going like a drum. There's the spin drift. The bullet's spinning, that's what keeps it stable, like a thrown football, but that same spin makes it slowly walk to one side over a long flight. At normal distances, you ignore it. At this distance, it'll move your round by feet. There's the air itself, how thick it is. Temperature, pressure, even how humid it is changes how fast the bullet slows down. Colder, denser air is like flying through soup. That morning had been cold. The afternoon was heating up, so even that was shifting under us. And then, and I swear I'm not making this up to sound dramatic, there's the planet. The Earth is turning underneath the bullet while it flies. 7 seconds of flight is enough that the ground actually moves a tiny bit relative to where the round is going. Shooters call it the Coriolis effect. At 3 feet, it's a joke. At 3,800 meters, with 7 seconds of flight, it's real, and you correct for it. And the direction of the correction even depends on which way you're shooting across the planet. Now stack all of that. The drop, the 5 winds, the spin, the air, the spin of the world itself. And here's the worst part. You don't get to add them up one at a time on paper. You add them up in your head in the cold with 40 men watching, with a sergeant behind you who already wrote your obituary, and you commit to one single solution. One sight picture. One held breath. One press of the finger. And then you wait 7 seconds to find out if you were right. That's what she said, sure too. She started talking. Low, almost a mutter. I realized after a second she wasn't talking to me, she was talking to herself, walking the round downrange in her mind before she ever sent it. Cold this morning, warming now, air's thinning out. She'll fly a hair flatter than the cold dope says. I called the chart. Base elevation off the card is. I know what the card says, she said, not mean, just sure. Cards for a colder world than the one we're in right now. Give me the card, then I'm gonna trim it. So I gave her the card number. And then I watched her sit there and trim it in her head, off feel. Off 3 days of sending rounds and watching where they actually landed, instead of where the math said they should. That's the thing they can't teach. The card gets you close. The card is science. But that last little adjustment, the part where you feel the day in your bones and shave a sliver off because the air smells different than it did at dawn, That's not science anymore. That's something else. That's 1,000 rounds living in your hands. Vance didn't have that. Vance had the card and a loud voice. She had the card and the feel. Then came the wind, and the wind is where it almost fell apart. I was glued to the spotting scope, watching the mirage, those heat waves shimmering up off the ground, the ones I told you to remember. Here's the trick nobody outside the community knows. The mirage isn't your enemy. The mirage is your friend. Those wavy lines move in the direction the wind's pushing them, and how fast they boil tells you how hard. A good spotter can read wind speed and direction off mirage alone, no flags, no fancy gear. Just the air showing you its hand. So I'm reading it, and down close by us it's lazy, drifting gentle left to right, maybe 3-4 miles an hour, easy. But I tracked the scope out further, out to that low dip about halfway, the spot where the ground sags and the heat pools, and the mirage out there was doing something I didn't like. It was boiling faster, and it had switched, right to left, stronger, maybe 8-9. So we had a left wind up close and a right wind in the middle, fighting each other along the flight path, and the round was going to have to fly through both. I called it, my voice cracked a little. Wind split, light left on us, switching to a stronger right at the midpoint, maybe 8-9 in the dip, then it looks like it lays back down near the plate. She didn't answer right away. And in that silence I thought, I've blown it. It's too much. Nobody can hold a split wind at 2 miles. She's going to send it and it's going to die in the dirt, and that man is going to win. Then she said, almost like she was pleased, "Good, that's a real read. Don't average it. Averaging a split wind out here'll bury you. The midpoint's where she's slowest and floppiest, that's where the wind owns her most. So I wait the middle. I hold for the dip, not for the whole trip." I didn't even fully understand it in the moment. I just knew it sounded right, the way a true thing sounds right even before you can prove it. She wasn't pretending the winds canceled out. She was figuring out which wind got the bullet at its weakest, most helpless moment, out in the middle, slow and falling, and she was building her whole hold around that one. She wasn't fighting all 5 winds. She was fighting the one that mattered most, at the one moment it mattered most, and respecting the rest just enough to survive them. I remember thinking, this is what the difference looks like. Not louder, smarter, quieter and smarter. Behind us, Vance still had to run his mouth, couldn't help himself. "Take your time, intern," he called out. "Real long way out there, no shame walking away." A couple guys laughed again, smaller laughs now though. You could feel the room starting to turn. People weren't quite sure anymore. The way she'd settled in, the way she was talking, it didn't look like someone about to embarrass herself. It looked like someone working. She ignored him completely. But I'll tell you what, her finger never tightened, her breath never jumped. The mockery didn't land on her at all. It just slid right off. And I realized that was maybe the most impressive thing of all, before she'd even fired a single round. The man was doing everything he could to get into her head, and her head simply had no door he could find. She dialed her elevation, big number way up. She dialed her windage off the split reed. Then she settled in behind the glass. The whole range went silent again, that deep silence. I could hear my own pulse in my ears. She took one breath, let half of it out, held. And right there, finger on the trigger, 2 miles of cold, thin desert air between her and a dot you couldn't see with your own eyes. I heard her whisper, and I don't think she even knew she said it out loud. "Okay, let's go find out." Trigger broke. I didn't hear a bang the way you'd think. Out there, with Hearing Pro in, the shot is more of a deep thump that you feel in your chest than a sound you hear with your ears. The rifle rocked back into her shoulder. A little puff of dust kicked up off the ground in front of the muzzle. And then nothing. That's the part movies never get right. In a movie, the shot goes off and the target blows up half a second later. Out here, you fire, and then the world just waits. The bullet's gone, climbing up into the sky on its long arc, and you're left lying in the dirt with 7 seconds of nothing to do but find out who you really are. 7 seconds. I had my eye glued to the spotting scope. My whole job, the only thing I existed for in that moment, was to see the splash, the little kick of dust or the flash off the steel that tells you where the round actually went. If I missed it, we'd have no idea how to correct, and we'd be shooting blind. So I didn't blink. I think I forgot how. Let me try to give you those 7 seconds the way they actually felt, because they did not feel like 7 seconds. They felt like a year. 1. The round's still climbing. I can't see it, you never see the bullet, but I know in my gut it's up there, way over the line of sight, arcing into that thin, cold sky. The crosswind in the dip is reaching up for it right about now. This is where her whole bet lives or dies. The midpoint, the weak spot, the place she said the wind owns the bullet most. 2. Behind me, dead silence. 40 grown men, not one of them breathing. I swear I could hear the little tick of the cooling rifle barrel. Somewhere far off, a hawk made one sound and then shut up, like even it knew. 3. I'm searching the scope. The target's still just that dancing white speck in the heat shimmer. I can't tell yet. Too far. Wait for it. Wait for it. My fingers pressed so hard against the scope's focus wring my knuckles gone white. 4. I hear Vance shift his weight behind me, just a little crunch of gravel, and I knew he was getting ready, getting his face ready, loading up that one-syllable laugh in the back of his throat so the second the round missed, he could let it out before the dust even settled. He wanted to be first. He wanted that laugh to be the sound everybody remembered. 5. The round's coming down now, falling out of the sky, dropping onto the target line, and everything is already decided. The math is done. The wind already had its say. There's nothing left to do, nothing anyone can change. It's just physics now, finishing the sentence she started. 6. I see movement near the plate, just the faintest thing. My heart slammed once hard. 7. And then through the scope, far away, soundless from this distance. The plate moved. It swung. That little white dot 2 miles out, the one you couldn't even see with your naked eye, kicked back and rocked on its hanger. A heartbeat later, the sound finally came crawling all the way back to us across the desert. Faint, almost too faint, but real. Clang. I didn't say anything for a second. I couldn't. I just stared through that scope at the plate still swinging, and my brain refused to do the math on what I'd watched. Then it caught up. She'd hit it, center, 3,800 meters, first round. A split crosswind, thinning air, the spin of the planet, all of it, and she'd reached out 2 miles and wrung that steel like she was tapping a friend on the shoulder. I came up off the scope, and I think the first thing out of my mouth was just, hit. That's a hit. Center. Dead, that's a center hit. And the range erupted. I mean, it came apart. All that silence, all that held breath, it just exploded out of 40 men at once. Somebody yelled something I can't repeat. 2 of the young guys were on their feet. A guy near the back actually took his hat off and threw it on the ground the way people do when they've seen something they don't have words for. One of the instructors, a hard, leathery old guy who I'd never seen so much as smile, just said low, almost to himself, "My God, first round. She did it first round." Because that was the part, not just that she hit it. Vance had needed to walk his rounds in, and even then he'd only nicked the dirt beside it. She'd called her shot, committed to one solution, sent one round and put it center on the first try. No walking it in. No second guess. 1. That's not luck. Luck doesn't go center on the first round at 2 miles. Luck nicks the berm and calls it close. What she did was the other thing. The thing that comes from 1,000 rounds and a head with no door in it. And here's the part I really came to tell you. I turned around to find her, to grab her, shake her, something, and she wasn't celebrating. She was already breaking the rifle down. Calm, methodical, same little movements as always. She'd pulled the bolt, was checking the chamber, wiping the optic with that same cloth from her pocket, like she'd just finished a normal range day, like she hadn't done the single most impossible thing any of us had ever watched a human being do. She caught me staring, and she gave me that little corner of the mouth smile again, just barely. "Told you," she said. "Steele doesn't care what he thinks." That's it, that's all she said. And then, and this is the part that gets me every time, she did the thing that told me exactly who she was. Better than the shot. Better than the smile. She looked over at Vance. He was just standing there. The laugh he'd loaded up never came out. His face had done something complicated. I watched it happen in real time. First the disbelief, that can't be right. Then the search for an excuse that she got lucky, the wind laid down for her. And then, underneath all of it, just for a second before he could hide it, something quieter. Something that looked a lot like shame. She didn't gloat. She didn't say, "Can I even try?" back to him, even though every man on that line would have cheered if she had. She didn't twist the knife. She just gave him a small nod. The same nod she gave the steel every time she rang it. A nod that said, "We're even, it's done, I've got nothing else to say to you." And then she went back to packing up her kit. That nod did more damage to that man than any insult ever could have. I watched it land on him. An insult he could have fought. He was built for that. But she didn't give him anything to fight. She just took everything he'd thrown at her, turned around, did the impossible, and then handed him a little nod of respect he hadn't earned and absolutely could not return. There's no comeback for that. There's no loud thing you can say to a person who beats you and then is kind about it. It just sits on you. The brass were talking among themselves now, fast, quiet, glancing at her. One of them was writing something down, and I remember thinking, whatever's in that notebook, it just changed her whole career, and she's not even looking at them. She's looking at her bolt carrier, making sure it's clean. But the story isn't over, not even close. Because what I haven't told you yet is why she was like that. Why nothing Vance said could find a door. Why she could hold a split wind at 2 miles with hands that didn't shake. It wasn't talent, or it wasn't only talent. It was something that happened to her a long way from that range, a long time before any of us met her. Something she'd never told anybody on that line. I only found out later, sitting across from her in a near-empty mess hall at 2 in the morning, when she finally let one door open, just a crack, just for me. And once I tell you that, you'll understand the shot completely differently. You'll understand the smile. You'll understand the nod. It was 3 days after the shot. We were still out at that range, finishing paperwork, waiting on transport. The kind of dead, in-between days the military's full of, too done to train, too stuck to leave. Everybody was bored. Most of the guys had spent those 3 days retelling the shot to each other, and somewhere in the retelling it had grown. By the 3rd night I heard a private swear it was 4,000 meters and that she'd called the wind off a single blade of grass. People do that. They take a true thing and they decorate it until it's a fairy tale. It bothered me a little, actually. The truth was better than the fairy tale. They just didn't know the truth yet. I didn't either, not the real one. I found her at about 2 in the morning. I couldn't sleep, too much coffee, too much thinking, and I went to the mess hall to sit. It was empty except for one light buzzing over the far table and her, sitting under it, a cup of something gone cold in front of her, just staring at the wall. I almost left. You learn to read when someone wants to be alone. But she saw me, and she did this small thing with her chin, "Sit if you want," so I sat. We didn't talk for a while. That was fine. She wasn't a talker, and I'd learned not to fill her silences. Then, out of nowhere, she said, "You want to know how I did it?" It wasn't really a question. I said, "Everybody wants to know how you did it." She shook her head slow. "No, everybody wants to know the number. The wind hold, the elevation, the trim off the card. That's what they keep asking. That's the easy part. I could teach a decent shooter the number in an afternoon." She turned the cold cup in a slow circle on the table. Nobody's asked me how I stayed quiet while he said it. I just waited. And then she told me. She grew up in a town she didn't name and I never asked. Small. Hard. The kind of place where money was always a problem and her father made it everybody else's problem too. She didn't tell it dramatically. That's what made it land. She told it flat, the way people tell the things that have already cost them all the crying they had. Her father, she said, was a man who couldn't stand to feel small. And the way he fixed that, the only way he knew, was by making everyone around him smaller. His wife, his kids, especially her, because she was the quiet one and quiet people are easy targets. He had a way of asking questions that weren't questions. You think you're smart? You think you can do that? Go ahead. Try. Said with a little smile. Said so that whatever you did next you'd already lost. Can you even try? She said, and gave a little laugh with no humor in it. You know how many times I heard that exact thing growing up, different words sometimes, same shape. Go ahead, try, let's all watch you fail. He must have said it 1,000 times. She looked at me. So when Vance said it on the line, it wasn't new. It was the oldest sound in the world to me. I've been hearing that man my whole life. He just had a different face. I didn't say anything. I didn't trust myself to, so she kept going. She told me she figured something out as a kid. Young. Younger than she should have had to. She figured out that her father needed her to react. That the whole point of the question wasn't the question. It was to make her flinch, make her small, make her loud and panicked and easy to knock over. The reaction was the prize he was fishing for. So she stopped giving it to him. I went somewhere else in my head, she said. When he started, I'd just go cold, go quiet. Find the one thing in front of me that was real and true and didn't lie, and I'd put all of myself into that one thing, and his voice would just be weather. You ever stand outside in the rain on purpose? After a minute, it's just water. It stops being an enemy. It's just falling. She tapped the table. For a long time, the real thing was schoolwork. A math problem doesn't care if you're scared. It's just true or it's not. You get it right or you don't, and your feelings have nothing to do with it. I loved that. God, I loved that. Something in the world that couldn't be bullied. And then she said the thing that rearranged the whole shot for me. Then I found the rifle, and the rifle was the same. Better even. The wind doesn't care about your father. Gravity doesn't care who thinks you're small. The steel rings or it doesn't, and the only thing that decides it is whether you did the work right. It's the most honest thing I've ever touched. You can't fake it. You can't talk your way past it. You can't bully it. She smiled, that corner of the mouth thing. It's the one place in the world that's completely fair. I sat there with all of that for a second, and it clicked, all of it. The calm wasn't a trick she'd learned in the military. She'd built it as a kid, in a kitchen, to survive a man at a table. The reason Vance's words found no door is that she'd sealed that door years ago, out of necessity, with a different man's voice on the other side of it. By the time Vance came along, she'd had 2 decades of practice not flinching at exactly that question. And the shot, the impossible shot, it wasn't her trying to prove him wrong. That's what I'd assumed. That's what everybody assumed. She showed him. But that wasn't it at all. I wasn't shooting at him, she told me. I never shoot at anybody. The second it becomes about a person, you've already lost, because now you're emotional and the wind eats you alive. The second he said it, I stopped thinking about him completely. I went where I always go. The cold, quiet place. And in that place there's no Vance and there's no range and there's no brass watching. There's just the wind in the dip. And the drop. And a piece of steel a long way out that's going to tell me the truth no matter what. She shrugged. He thought he was rattling me. He actually did me a favor. He sent me to the calmest place I know. I should have thanked him. I asked her I had to, did you ever beat him, your father? She was quiet for a long time. There's no beating a man like that, she finally said. You can't win the game because he made the game so you can't. The only thing you can do is stop playing it, walk off the board. Go find something honest and pour yourself into it and let it tell you who you are instead of him. She looked at her cold cup. The steel told me, Took a long time, but it told me, and it never once lied. I think that was the most either of us ever said to the other. We sat a while longer, not talking, and then she got up, rinsed her cup, gave me that little nod, the steel nod, the one she gave Vance and went to find some sleep. I sat under that buzzing light for another hour. Couldn't move. Because I'd come in thinking I'd watched a great shot, and I was leaving knowing I'd watched something else entirely. I'd watched a kid who got told 1,000 times, can you even try grow up and aim that question 2 miles downrange and answer it with a single round, center, first try, not for him, not for anybody, but for the small quiet version of herself who'd never been allowed to. That's a different story than the one the privates were telling. It's a better one. It's just quieter, like her. The morning we shipped out was cold again. That first light cold where your breath hangs in front of your face like smoke. The same cold from the morning of the shot, like the desert wanted to bookend the whole thing. Trucks idling, gear stacked, 40 tired men standing around in the half-dark waiting to be told where to stand next. The mood was loose, the way it gets when training's done and everybody just wants to go home. I was loading my bag when I saw Vance walking toward her. My stomach dropped a little. 3 days he'd been quiet. 3 days he'd taken the ribbing and the guys had ribbed him, gently, the way men do, little comments about needing a spotting scope to find his ego after she'd shrunk it. He'd taken it with a tight jaw and not much else. But now here he was, walking straight at her across the gravel, and I thought, here it comes. He's been stewing. He's going to say something to even it up. He can't leave it where it is. I started walking over. Don't know what I thought I'd do. I just didn't want her to face it alone, even though of anybody alive, she was the one person who didn't need me to. She saw him coming, didn't tense, didn't square up, just set down her bag and turned to face him, calm as still water, hands loose at her sides. He stopped in front of her, big man. She had to look up to meet his eyes. And for a second nobody said anything. The trucks idled. The cold hung in the air. Then Vance did the thing I never saw coming. He put out his hand. Not a fist, not a finger in her face. An open hand held out for her to shake. And his jaw was working like the words were costing him something, like he was paying for each one out of a pocket that didn't have much in it. That shot, he said, low, just for her, though I was close enough now to hear. I've been doing this 19 years. I've never seen anything like it. Not once. Not from anybody. She didn't move yet, just watched him, letting him finish. He swallowed, and what I said on the line, that was, he stopped, tried again. I was wrong about you, plain wrong. I made you small in front of the brass because I felt small watching you outshoot my whole section all week, and he stopped again, shook his head. There's no good way to say it. I was wrong, that's it. I'm sorry. I'll be honest with you, that surprised me more than the shot did. Because the shot in the end was physics. Hard, beautiful, near impossible physics, but physics. A thing a person can train toward. But a loud, proud man, a legend, standing in the cold in front of 40 people, putting out his hand and saying I was wrong, I was small, I'm sorry, out loud, to the person he tried to humiliate, that's a different kind of impossible. That's the kind most men never manage their whole lives. I've known guys go to their graves before they'd say those 3 words to somebody they'd wronged. He said them standing up in public to a corporal half his size. It turns out the man wasn't only what he showed on the line. Most people aren't. She looked at his hand for a second. And then she took it. Firm one shake. And here's what she said, the last thing I ever heard her say to him. And I've turned it over in my head 100 times since. She said, you weren't wrong to push me. You were wrong about why you did it. A pause. Somebody pushed you once too, didn't they? Made you small. That's why you're so good at finding it in other people. You learned it from somebody. Vance just stared at her. And his eyes, this big, hard 19-year man, his eyes went somewhere far away for a second. Somewhere a long time ago. Somewhere that, I'd bet anything, had a table and a voice and a question that wasn't really a question. He didn't answer, he didn't have to. The look was the answer. She held his hand one more beat and said, quiet, it's a hard thing to put down, but you can put it down. You don't have to hand it to the next person. Then she let go, picked up her bag and walked to the truck. I caught up to her at the tailgate. I didn't have anything smart to say. I just said, how'd you know about him, about somebody pushing him? She tossed her bag up and looked at me, and gave me that small smile one last time. Because I know the shape of it, she said. People who weren't made small don't go around making other people small. They've got no reason to. Vance wasn't a cruel man. He was a hurt man with a loud voice and a target-rich environment. She climbed up into the truck. I just recognized him, like looking in a mirror that went a different way than mine. And that was it. The trucks rolled. We went our separate ways like everybody always does, and I lost track of her the way you lose track of almost everybody in this line of work slowly, and then all at once. I heard things over the years, that she made instructor, that she's somewhere now teaching the next batch of shooters not the number, anybody can teach the number, but the other thing. The quiet place, the honest steel, how to put your whole self into the one true thing in front of you and let the noise be weather. I hope it's true, it feels true, it feels like exactly what she'd do. So that's the story, the whole thing told straight, no decoration. People always want the part where she rings the steel at 3,800 meters. And I get it, it's a hell of a thing to watch a person reach out 2 miles and answer a cruel question with one round, dead center first try. I'll never see anything like it again. But that's not the part I keep. The part I keep is a woman who got asked, can you even try 1,000 times by a man who wanted her small? And instead of getting loud, instead of getting bitter, she went and found the one honest thing in the world that couldn't be bullied, and she got so good at it that the question lost all its teeth. And then, when she finally had a chance to be cruel right back, when she'd earned the right to twist the knife in front of everybody, she didn't. She put out a hand instead. She told a hurt man he could put it down. The world is full of people asking, can you even try, fathers, sergeants, the voice in your own head at 2 in the morning. And most of us spend our whole lives trying to prove them wrong, getting loud, getting bitter, aiming at the person instead of the target. She taught me something different. Don't shoot at them, never shoot at them. Go quiet, find the one true thing and put everything you've got into it. The steel doesn't care what they think. And in the end, neither should you.